Good evening. Welcome to Apalachicola and the historic Chestnut Street Cemetery. Tonight I'll be talking about a character I played by the name of Leander Miller Crawford. And Leander was a young man when he died here in Apalachicola. He moved down here with his parents from Maine, and as most smart people do, when they leave Maine they go south. So he ended up here in Apalachicola. He was a waterman. He was also one of the harbor masters here. In 1860, he was aboard a steamship that blew up, and he was mortally injured, terribly burned, in terrible pain, and ended up less than 25 years old, buried in the cemetery. And it's a rather significant monument, as you can see. He was the only son, so his parents put this here in memory of him, and we're glad to remember him and his part in the success of Apalachicola.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my home. Yes, this is my home now, and it's been for some time. Although at one time I had a beautiful home just across the street over there. As the young lady said, I am William Thomas Marler, Dr. Marler, DDS, Doctor of Dental Science. Now, I'm not a native of this area. In fact, I was born in Vernon, Alabama, which, if you're familiar with geography, is up in the northwest part of the state, right on the Mississippi border. I got my formal education in the Vernon Public Schools. As a child, I was very precocious, but I had a keen interest in the sciences. After school, I knocked around and obtained a few jobs, and then found myself in the city of Columbus, Mississippi. There, I took up a job as a regular clerk, but I befriended a man that would change my life forever. He was a gentleman that ran an apothecary, a drugstore, if you will. And in those days, there were no dentists. Doctors, barbers, and apothecaries, drugstore owners, actually performed dentistry. And really, in those days, dentistry meant just pulling teeth. But I apprenticed under this man and took a keen interest in the dental sciences. And I studied under him for a number of years, but I could only go so far. And then, in 1878, I had heard that the good folks in Knoxville, Tennessee, up at that prestigious university, were starting a school of dentistry. Now, this was to be the third school of dentistry in the United States. So, I got in touch with those folks, applied, and I was admitted to one of the very first classes. Now, I studied there for 2 years, learned all about the dental sciences. And due to my academic standing, when I was done, I got a postdoctoral degree at the renowned Haskell Institute in Chicago, Illinois. My formal education in dentistry complete, I decided to enter private practice. But the question was, where shall I do it? I've always loved the ocean. And being from this part of the country, I found the wonderful city of Apalachicola. So I settled here in hopes of starting my dental practice. Now, I still had mouths to feed. So when I first arrived in Apalachicola, in addition to starting my practice, there was a drugstore in town operated by a Dr. J.D. Rush. I entered into business with him, and we were partners in this drug business. And in fact, we ran it for many, many years. After 10 years, I in fact bought him out. So I was the sole practitioner of that drugstore. And my dental practice grew. And I must admit I was quite good. But I was always concerned for the good people of Apalachicola. And there were many people who could not afford my services. But that did not deter me, because quite often I donated them to the poor, because I truly believed in dental health. And in fact, in 1893, I attended the Chicago World Dentistry Convention. It was in conjunction with the World Columbia Institute. And this was a gathering of all the famous dental minds in the country. And there was a new piece of equipment that was going to be displayed for the very first time in the United States. The Doriat Dental Engine. Now, those of you that aren't familiar with the world of dentistry may not be familiar with that. But in the old days, the dental drill was usually powered by a foot pedal by the dentist. So many a time when I had to drill a person's tooth, I had to move my foot up and down to keep that drill going. So it's safe to say, if you were going to have any dentistry done, best to have it done in the morning when the dentist has his full bim and vigor. Otherwise, it could be a long and arduous process. But the Doriat machine changed everything, because this still had a pedal, but it had a wheel. And with a lowly assistant powering that wheel, the dentist and I were free to work upon our patients unencumbered. And my practice was very, very lucrative. However, because I value education, I valued the children and the people of Apalachicola. And I became involved in civic affairs to the end that I was a city commissioner for the city of Apalachicola, and then moved on to become a county commissioner for the Franklin County. And again, I was interested in the children and realized that they had no libraries. So I became a member of the library committee and was instrumental in starting the first free library in Apalachicola, Florida. And I am proud to say that I assume it still exists to this day. Now, there is one other, shall I say, skill that I had, and it's one that I realized that I had when I was a little child. I had the amazing ability to communicate with spirits. I know there are some who may be skeptical, but the fact remains, I can. Although initially I was afraid to tell folks about it, as time went on, I became more and more comfortable about it. In fact, I would conduct seances for friends and acquaintances to give them the ability to contact their dearly departed. And eventually, word spread all around the area, and folks came from far and wide to attend my seances. In fact, they used to say that I could make a table dance. Although it wasn't me that was making that table dance, it was the power of the spirits that came into the room. Now I know that there are doubters, and there were doubters then that called me a quack, but there are those that believe. And I know that each and every one of you believes that you can communicate with the spirits. If you don't, then I have to ask you, why are you here? Well, folks, I would love to continue this discussion, but my energy is not what it used to be. I get tired very easily. After all, I haven't eaten in nearly 100 years. So I'm going to take a rest now, and please feel free to go around and visit with my neighbors. And I hope to see you all here next year. And I hope you're here, because I know I will be. Good night.
Hello, how are you all tonight? My name is Mary Fuller, and my sweet husband is named William. We came to Apalachicola back in the 1800s, and we decided to stay here. We fell in love with the beautiful hotel called the Apalachicola Inn. A few years after we got here, Mr. Hancock, who had owned the hotel, passed away, and his wife decided that she would sell it, and I wanted to buy it. And I told my husband, I said, let's buy the hotel. He said, we can't buy the hotel. I said, what you mean we can't buy the hotel? He said, because they're not going to sell it to us. I said, why? He said, because you're a freed slave. And who ever heard of a slave in Apalachicola owning anything? I said, well, you come here, honey. Let me give you a lump of this brown sugar. Now you go and get me that hotel. He went to stepping, honey. He came back, he had the hotel. And so I talked to Mrs. Hancock, and I told her that I would never do anything to make her reputation bad. I said, two things I'm going to change. I'm going to change the name of the hotel to the Fuller Hotel, and I'm going to serve blacks as well as whites. You only serve white. She said, fine with me. Money's green, that's all I want to know. So we became hotel owners. And everybody that was anybody that came to Apalachicola stayed at the Fuller Inn. I don't know whether it was that good old country cooking, you know, homemade biscuits, brown sugar biscuits, and also cornbread, fried chicken, collard greens, the crisp clean sheets we had on the bed. But I think it was the little brown sugar maids bringing the clean towels in every morning that caught their attention. Well, we ran the hotel for a long time. Then we got too busy and we had to get some partners. We got Sparta and Belle Jenkins as partners for the hotel. And we made a success out of it. Finally, Mr. Williams died, and then I passed away. And Jenkins ran the hotel then. And they kept it going until the war, when the hotel caught on fire and they tore it down. But we had a successful time. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Williams calling me. I gotta go. See you next year.
Good evening. I'm Dominic Cantonetti. I am originally from Roino, which is in Austria. It wasn't Roino for 500 years before it. It was the Republic of Venice. Hence, I'm really Italian. I met my wife in Sicily. We emigrated to the United States for a better life. Roino was a fabulous fishing town, and I was a good pilot. However, work was running out and the United States beckoned. We traveled to New York City, which was part of the trade triangle. New York, as you know, is extremely unfavorable. We hated it. And we heard about the next port of call, which was the third largest port in America was Apalachicola. So we said, let's go. It's a fishing town, the weather's beautiful. We got here eventually and couldn't leave. In fact, I became a fisherman here and eventually a pilot captain. I would pilot the big ships bringing cotton and goods into this harbor for years. It was needed because the river was dangerous and the big ships needed help getting here. Well, that lasted forever. My wife, unfortunately, we had a great time here and loved each other, but she died before me in 1904, and I passed on at the age of 85 in 1905. And we appreciate your visits at the grave.
Oh, hi, I'm John Rouge. Sorry about that. There's maggots in my mouth. I'm dead, you know, I'm dead. When I was alive, I was quite an entrepreneur here in Apalachicola. My brother George and I had an import-export business. We had a canning factory. We canned seafood now and then. My dad, George Herman Rouge, owned and operated an iron foundry. And if you look around here in the cemetery, most of this iron work came from his foundry. Now, I personally, I was regarded as the stingiest man in Apalachicola. I would have my stenographers save paper clips. I would tell them if they made a mistake on my letterhead paper, they would have to clip it off and use the bottom for notes around the office and so forth. I saved rubber bands, string. If a package came in with string on it, I told them, you save that string. You never know when you're going to need it. And you know, some of that's coming back to haunt me now, because when you're dead, sometimes you have to carry this stuff around with you. But anyway, in 1902, I ran for mayor of Apalachicola. I was going to bring fiscal responsibility to the city. Well, I only got one vote. So that was the end of my political aspirations. My one vote would have been two if my wife Fanny had been able to vote then, but women didn't have the vote. So anyway, you'll have to talk to her for the rest of my story.
Okay, good evening. I have a family that's been here in Apalachicola for many, many years. I was born in Apalachicola in 1850 and was born to Jacob and Margaret, Lynn, German immigrants, had a Mercantile here for many, many years, and were shopkeepers. I spent all of my younger years here and then wound up traveling. But when I was 20 years old, I moved to Ohio, Tuscany County, to become a saddler and learn the leather trade as a way to earn a living, since my father's business didn't produce enough income for two families. So in 10 years up there, around 1880, I had learned my trade, married my wife, Elizabeth, and had returned and set up a harness company down in the old building where the old post office is, down on Commerce Street. As time went along and harness business kind of declined, I started being a dealer in seafood. Went from seafood to buying some property around in the area, and then ultimately wound up loaning some money to a few select individuals in the community. As I prospered, I made a very unfortunate loan to a Reverend Roundtree. He and his wife Maud came to this area and wanted some money to build a Presbyterian church. I loaned them $750. They built the church, held services until 1912. Never paid me a penny back, and so it was obvious they weren't going to. And so I foreclosed on the church. Didn't give me much of a reputation. The pastor, his wife, and children went to Arizona. I guess I was, in my obituary, they called me outspoken, called me blunt, said I had an impetuous temperament. I always stated my opinion and was plain spoken. So when it's all said and done, you would think I was kind of ostracized in the village, but if you go to Trinity Episcopal Church, you'll see a stained glass window there today that was donated in my memory. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam Montgomery. I was known as Bud in these parts, and I was born in our house there at the St. Patrick's Catholic Church at 6th and C. And my daddy, who became a big timber baron, then built us a fancy big new house at 6th and G, and we own the whole block. And it is a beautiful specimen, all cypress, gorgeous home. Well, I decided I didn't really want to be in the timber business, and so I opened a dry goods store called Montgomery Dry Goods at Market and Avenue E. And that building is still there today and is a beautiful representation of early century architecture, brick with gorgeous 14-foot ceilings and heart pine floors and walls. And in my dry goods store, on the one side I had women and children's clothing, the other side I had men's and young boys' clothing, and we had everything for the house: utensils, china, silverware. And so it was quite the store in these parts. Well, after I passed away, my son, gosh darn it, moved our store to Bradenton, and then Austin's department store was opened, and they had the same concept, and they were there for decades, and many people in these parts still remember buying their prom dress at Austin's. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm James Coombs. This is my lovely wife, Maria Coombs.
Good evening.
I was born in 1842. I died in 1911. I hail from Maine before the Civil War. I joined the Civil War. It went much longer than we all intended. And after that, I went back and married my high school sweetheart. And she can tell you a little bit about what we did after that.
After that, we moved to Pensacola, where we stayed there just shortly, and my husband decided to move to Apalachicola, where he thought would be doing better in his business, which he did.
The first thing I did was a lumber mill, and it was very successful. Something y'all might remember is the Coombs House, which is still in existence today. I was also asked to be the vice president too. Ta-da-da-da. Roosevelt. I like to put her on the spot. She always claims that didn't happen, so I have to remind her. I had my face on some currency, U.S. printed currency. I did a lot of things. Our house burned down, and we had to move to the. They used to call it the Franklin Inn, which y'all would know it as the Gibson Inn. We never got to return to that house. My wife died while we were at the Gibson Inn, and I died 30 years later. And those are our tombs, and we rest together. And we come out once every year, and we're glad you're here with us.
And the story is that I died 2 weeks after the house burned down because I was just heartbroken and terrified of what happened.
And I died 30 months later because I was heartbroken. And you can see why.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, by the way, I made this cane. Still around today.
Hi, I'm so glad you came to Chestnut Cemetery to visit with me tonight. Wait a minute. What am I doing here? Oh, I forgot I died. I'm Elizabeth Marr Cooper Henderson, and I married a wonderful man by the name of Sam Cooper. And Sam was not only a good man, he was a good provider. He ran the dry goods store at the corner of Avenue E and Commerce Street right here in Apalachicola. Right in the 1920s and 30s, we did a booming business there. But then Sam up and died on me. And I was just heartbroken. I loved that man so dearly. But Sam, that's not getting you off the hook now. Just because I loved you so much, I'm still mad at you for up and dying before I did. But anyway, after Sam died, I tried to run the dry goods store by myself for a while. But I was too upset to run anything. So I sold the store, and I just lived on the money for a while and stayed home. But as the years drifted by, the money drifted out, and I realized I had to do something. Well, World War II came along, and I opened Elizabeth's Style Shop. And that just did really well while the war was going on. But then the war got over, and the men came home, and there were more young men in town than there were jobs for young men, and times got tough. And my style shop just closed down. And I searched my mind to think, what can I do to earn a living? What can a single woman do to earn a living here? And I thought I would provide a service that Apalachicola wasn't providing for these young veterans. And I thought I would open a pool hall. And so I did. I called it the Pastime. Gentlemen would tipple a little bit of wine and beer, and we had pool tables lots of pool tables. And everyone had a wonderful time until they sold the building out from under me. And then I just didn't know what I would do. I looked around all over downtown, and there wasn't another place for me to open a pool hall. And then I thought, well, I have a lovely big home. You all know it as the Chapman House now. It's right there across the alley. And I have all these big rooms downstairs and all these beautiful chandeliers with plenty of lighting to play pool by. So I moved the business and the pool tables all together to my home. And I ran my business out of my home no matter what anybody said. And it was successful for a while. And then I married Mr. Henderson. But that didn't work out too well. I had been independent for too long by then. And so we parted good friends. And Mr. Henderson and I owned property all over town, and as I got older and I needed to sell property to make ends meet along and along, why, he didn't mind a bit. And he was just glad, because all he wanted was for the best things for me, and he didn't care. And I came to realize that if I wanted to make anything of myself and I wanted to have a good life, I was going to have to do it on my own. And so I did. And I did have a good life. And I wish for a good life for you too. And I thank you for coming by to see me. And I hope you stop back by again.